The sun was shining brightly over the busy streets of downtown, casting long shadows across the pavement as people hurried to their destinations. Among them was Mrs. Evelyn Harper, a petite elderly woman with a warm smile and eyes that sparkled with wisdom. Her floral dress swayed gently as she walked, and her wide-brimmed hat shielded her from the midday sun. She carried herself with grace, her steps slow but deliberate, as if every movement had purpose. Today, Evelyn wasn't heading to church or visiting friends. She had somewhere important to go. First National Trust Bank. First National Trust Bank was an imposing structure made of gleaming white marble, its tall columns stretching toward the sky like ancient sentinels guarding treasures within. The building stood out among the glass and steel skyscrapers surrounding it, exuding power and prestige. Inside, the lobby buzzed with activity. Customers waited in line at teller counters, while bankers in crisp suits moved briskly between offices. It was a place where fortunes were managed, loans approved, and dreams funded, or crushed. Evelyn paused just outside the revolving doors, taking a deep breath. This moment had been years in the making, and now that it was here, she felt both, excitement and nerves bubbling inside her. With a final glance upward at the towering edifice, she stepped inside. The cool, air-conditioned atmosphere enveloped her immediately, offering relief from the heat outside. She crossed the polished floor, her heels clicking softly against the marble tiles. Heads turned slightly as she passed. Some noticed her elegant attire. Others simply registered her presence briefly before returning to their tasks. At the counter, Evelyn approached a young man with neatly combed hair and a friendly smile pinned to his face. "Good afternoon," he greeted cheerfully, ready to assist yet another customer. But when Evelyn opened her mouth to speak, what came out stopped him, and everyone else nearby in their tracks. "I own this bank," she said calmly, her voice steady and clear, despite the weight of her words. There was no hint of hesitation, no quiver of uncertainty. She spoke as though stating a simple fact, like saying the sky is blue or water is wet. For a split second, there was silence. Then, laughter erupted around her. Not just polite chuckles, but loud, unrestrained guffaws that echoed through the cavernous space. The young teller blinked, unsure whether to laugh along or try to explain the absurdity of her statement. Nearby customers exchanged amused glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. One man even leaned over to his companion and whispered, "Did she really say she owns the bank?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She stood there, dignified and composed, watching the spectacle unfold around her. To those laughing, she might have seemed like a sweet old lady who had lost touch with reality. They assumed she was confused, perhaps suffering from dementia or simply misunderstanding how banks worked. After all, how could someone like her, a black woman in her late 70s dressed in modest clothing, possibly own such a massive institution? It sounded preposterous. But Evelyn knew better. Beneath her calm exterior lay decades of knowledge, memories passed down through generations and hard evidence tucked safely away in her handbag. She didn't expect anyone to believe her right away. In fact, she almost anticipated the ridicule. What surprised her, however, was how quickly people dismissed her without even asking questions. No one bothered to inquire why she made such a bold claim. Instead, they laughed, assuming she couldn't possibly be serious. Still, Evelyn remained unfazed. She had come prepared for skepticism, knowing full well that proving her ownership wouldn't be easy. But she also knew something else. Truth has a way of surfacing eventually, no matter how deeply it's buried. And Evelyn Harper wasn't about to let anyone, not the snickering employees, not the indifferent executives upstairs, stand in her way. As the laughter began to die down and people returned to their business, Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were photocopies of documents, faded but legible, detailing her family's connection to the bank. Without saying another word, she slid the folder across the counter to the bewildered teller. "Take these to your manager," she instructed, firmly. "Tell him I'll wait." The young man hesitated, unsure what to do. He glanced at the folder, then back at Evelyn, whose unwavering gaze left little room for argument. Finally, he nodded and disappeared into the labyrinth of cubicles and offices behind him. As she waited, Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. This was only the beginning, and though the world around her still doubted her, Evelyn Harper knew one thing for certain: the proof was on its way, and when it arrived, no one would be laughing anymore. After leaving the bank, Evelyn Harper returned to her modest apartment, a cozy space filled with memories and heirlooms that told the story of her family's journey. The walls were adorned with framed photographs, black and white images of ancestors smiling through time, their faces weathered but proud. There were faded newspaper clippings tacked up alongside handwritten letters, each piece of history whispering stories of resilience and triumph. But today, Evelyn didn't linger on these artifacts. Instead, she made her way to a small wooden chest tucked away in the corner of her living room. It was old, its surface scratched and worn from years of use, but it held something far more precious than its appearance suggested. Unlocking the chest, Evelyn carefully lifted out a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and soft from decades of handling. This wasn't just any book. It was a treasure trove of her family's legacy, passed down from generation to generation. Her grandmother had given it to her when she was just a child, instructing her to guard it with her life. "This is our truth," her grandmother had said sternly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Never forget where we came from, Evelyn. We built this country too." Evelyn opened the journal, the scent of aged paper filling the air. Inside, pages were filled with neat handwriting, sketches, and faded ink stamps. The entries chronicled the life of Isaiah Harper, Evelyn's great-grandfather, a man who had risen from the ashes of slavery to become one of the most remarkable figures in her family's history. Born into bondage in the antebellum South, Isaiah had been freed during Reconstruction, a tumultuous period when America struggled to rebuild itself after the Civil War. Despite facing unimaginable challenges, Isaiah refused to let hardship define him. He worked tirelessly, saving every penny he earned from sharecropping and odd jobs until he could purchase his first plot of land. But Isaiah's ambitions didn't stop there. Recognizing the importance of economic independence, he ventured into business, buying and selling crops, livestock, and supplies. His hard work paid off, and soon he began investing in larger enterprises, including banks. At the time, many newly emancipated African Americans pooled their resources to create financial institutions that would serve their communities. These banks provided loans for homes, farms, and businesses, helping Black families build wealth in a society determined to keep them marginalized. Isaiah became one of the founding shareholders of what would eventually evolve into First National Trust Bank. As Evelyn flipped through the journal, she paused at certain pages that highlighted key moments in Isaiah's life. One entry described how he traveled miles on foot to attend shareholder meetings, often enduring hostility and discrimination, just to have his voice heard. Another detailed his efforts to educate other former slaves about the importance of owning property and participating in the economy. "Knowledge is power," he wrote in bold letters, underlining the phrase twice for emphasis. Tucked between the pages were physical remnants of Isaiah's achievements, stock certificates bearing his name, deeds to parcels of land, and correspondence with fellow investors. Evelyn ran her fingers over these documents, feeling the texture of history beneath her fingertips. Each item served as proof of her family's contributions, not only to the bank, but to the broader fabric of American society. Yet as she reflected on Isaiah's accomplishments, sadness crept into her heart. Over the years, much of what he had built had been eroded, not by chance but by design. Evelyn remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell about the obstacles their family faced. During the Jim Crow era, discriminatory laws and practices, like redlining, systematically stripped Black families of their wealth. Banks refused to lend to African Americans or charged exorbitant interest rates, making it nearly impossible to maintain properties or grow businesses. Predatory schemes targeted vulnerable communities, siphoning away assets that had taken generations to accumulate. And then there were the mergers, the corporate takeovers that swallowed smaller banks whole, burying any trace of minority ownership beneath layers of bureaucracy. Despite these setbacks, Evelyn's family had managed to hold on to fragments of their legacy. The journal, Along with the documents inside was a testament to their perseverance. Her grandmother had drilled this history into her from a young age, ensuring she understood the significance of their ancestry. "We are Harpers," she would say firmly. "Our blood runs deep in this soil. Don't you ever let anyone make you feel small." Now sitting alone in her apartment, Evelyn felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Proving her claim wouldn't be easy. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with skepticism, resistance, and perhaps even hostility. But she also knew she couldn't turn back. For Isaiah, for her grandmother, and for all the generations that came before her, she had to fight. Determined to gather more evidence, Evelyn began sorting through the contents of the chest. Alongside the journal, she found yellowed newspaper articles detailing Isaiah's ventures, as well as letters exchanged between him and other prominent black leaders of the time. Some praised his vision and tenacity, while others warned of the dangers he faced as a successful black man in a hostile world. Evelyn read each word carefully, piecing together a narrative that painted a vivid picture of her great-grandfather's struggles and successes. Her mind drifted to her granddaughter Tanya, who often visited on weekends. A bright young woman, with a passion for social justice, Tanya shared Evelyn's determination to uncover the truth. Together they had spent countless hours discussing the family's history, brainstorming ways to validate their claims. Evelyn decided it was time to involve Tanya more actively. She reached for her phone and dialed her number. "Hey, Grandma," Tanya answered cheerfully. "What's up?" "I need your help," Evelyn said, her tone serious yet hopeful. "It's time we took this to the next level." Over the phone, Evelyn explained everything: the visit to the bank, the laughter, the folder of documents she had left with the manager. She told Tanya about the journal and the evidence it contained, emphasizing the importance of proving their family's rightful place in history. By the end of the call, Tanya was fired up, ready to join the fight. That evening, as Evelyn sat surrounded by the artifacts of her past, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she wasn't alone. With Tanya by her side and the spirit of Isaiah guiding her, she was prepared to face whatever came her way. The truth was buried deep, but Evelyn Harper was determined to dig it up, one page, one document, one memory at a time. The next morning, Evelyn Harper sat at her kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea in front of her. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet room as she stared at the pile of documents spread out before her. Each piece of paper was like a puzzle piece, waiting to be connected to form a complete picture. But Evelyn knew that solving this puzzle wouldn't be easy. It required expertise, resources, and most importantly, belief. Something many people had failed to offer so far. With Tanya by her side, Evelyn began reaching out to professionals who might help validate her claims. They started with local lawyers, hoping to find someone knowledgeable about historical property rights and corporate law. At first, their efforts seemed promising. A few attorneys listened attentively as Evelyn explained her family's history and showed them the journal and accompanying documents. But after taking a closer look, most shook their heads apologetically. "This is fascinating," one said, "but proving ownership after so many decades will be nearly impossible." Another bluntly suggested that Isaiah Harper's stake in the bank had likely been diluted or erased entirely through mergers and acquisitions over the years. "You're chasing ghosts," he added, his tone dismissive. Each rejection stung, but Evelyn refused to give up. She reminded herself why she was doing this, not for personal gain, but to honor her ancestors and reclaim what rightfully belonged to her family. Still, the constant doubt wore on her. Late one night, as she flipped through the journal again, tears welled up in her eyes. For a moment, she wondered if everyone was right, if she really was fighting a losing battle. But then, she remembered Isaiah's words scrawled in bold letters: "Knowledge is power." If knowledge could empower her great-grandfather to rise from slavery and build a legacy, surely it could guide her now. Tanya noticed the toll the process was taking on her grandmother. Though only in her mid-20s, Tanya had always admired Evelyn's strength and resilience. Seeing her doubt herself was heartbreaking. Determined to lift Evelyn's spirits, Tanya decided to take matters into her own hands. She spent hours online researching experts in forensic accounting, genealogy, and historical asset recovery. One name kept popping up: Dr. Marcus Hale, a historian known for uncovering hidden stories of Black wealth during Reconstruction. Intrigued, Tanya reached out to him via email, attaching scanned copies of some of the documents. To their surprise, Dr. Hale responded within days. He expressed interest in Evelyn's case, noting that the evidence she provided was compelling, enough to warrant further investigation. Encouraged by his enthusiasm, Evelyn and Tanya arranged a meeting at his office. When they arrived, Dr. Hale greeted them warmly, his walls lined with books and framed photographs of civil rights leaders. As Evelyn recounted her story, he listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. By the end of their conversation, he nodded thoughtfully. "This isn't just your family's story," he said. "It's part of a larger narrative about how systemic racism has erased Black contributions to American wealth building. If we can prove your claim, it could set an important precedent." Dr. Hale agreed to assist them pro bono, connecting them with specialists who could analyze the documents more thoroughly. Among these experts was Rachel Chen, a forensic accountant skilled in tracing financial transactions across centuries. Rachel examined the stock certificates and shareholder agreements, cross-referencing them with archived records from banks that had merged with First National Trust. Meanwhile, another team member, a genealogist named Daniel Parks, worked to verify Isaiah Harper's lineage and confirm his role in the bank's founding. As weeks turned into months, progress came in small but significant increments. Rachel discovered discrepancies in the bank's merger documents, suggesting that minority shareholders like Isaiah may have been deliberately excluded from certain negotiations. Daniel uncovered census records and land deeds that corroborated Evelyn's account of her great-grandfather's rise to prominence. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Despite these breakthroughs, Evelyn faced moments of frustration. Some leads turned out to be dead ends, while others required additional verification that took time and effort. There were days when she questioned whether all this work would amount to anything. Yet every time doubt crept in, Tanya was there to remind her of how far they'd come. "Grandma, think about everything we've uncovered already," Tanya would say. "We're not just proving ownership, we're rewriting history." One afternoon, as Evelyn sifted through newly acquired records, she stumbled upon something extraordinary: a letter written by Isaiah Harper himself. Addressed to fellow investors, it outlined his vision for the future of the bank and emphasized the importance of including marginalized communities in its operations. Reading his words felt like hearing his voice echo across time. Evelyn felt a surge of pride and determination. This wasn't just about money or ownership. It was about justice. Her great-grandfather had dreamed of equality and opportunity, and she owed it to him to see this through. Their efforts eventually caught the attention of a journalist named Lisa Martinez, who specialized in investigative reporting on racial inequality. After learning about Evelyn's story, Lisa requested an interview. Initially hesitant, Evelyn agreed, realizing the potential impact of sharing her journey with a wider audience. The article, titled "The Woman Who Says She Owns the Bank," appeared in a national magazine, sparking widespread interest. Readers were captivated by Evelyn's courage and the historical significance of her claim. Social media buzzed with discussions about reparations, economic justice, and the erasure of Black history. The publicity brought both support and criticism. Some praised Evelyn for standing up against institutional oppression, while others dismissed her as delusional. Hate mail arrived, accusing her of fabricating her story for attention. But Evelyn remained unfazed. She focused instead on the growing network of allies rallying behind her cause. Community organizations offered assistance, historians shared insights, and even strangers sent messages of encouragement. Evelyn realized she wasn't alone in this fight. She had become a symbol of hope for countless others seeking recognition and restitution. Through it all, Evelyn's resolve only grew stronger. With each new discovery, each supportive voice, and each step forward, she felt closer to achieving her goal. The laughter she had encountered at the bank no longer haunted her. Instead, it fueled her determination to prove that truth and justice could prevail, no matter how long it took. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, Evelyn Harper walked it with her head held high, knowing that every challenge she faced brought her one step closer to vindication, for herself, for her family, and for generations yet to come. It was a crisp autumn evening, and the city buzzed with excitement as First National Trust Bank hosted its annual charity gala. The event was held in a grand ballroom adorned with crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and tables laden with gourmet dishes. Wealthy patrons mingled under the soft glow of candlelight, their laughter blending with the strains of a live jazz band. Among the attendees was Vin Diesel, the muscular action star known for his roles in blockbuster films. But tonight he wasn't there to entertain or promote a movie. He had come because of something far more compelling. Earlier that week, Diesel had overheard whispers about an elderly black woman who claimed to own the bank. At first, the story seemed too absurd to be true, but curiosity got the better of him. He began asking questions, piecing together fragments of information from staff members and guests. What intrigued him most wasn't just the audacity of the claim, it was the passion behind it. This wasn't some random person seeking attention. This was someone fighting for justice, trying to reclaim what had been stolen from her family. Diesel felt a deep connection to such stories. As someone who often used his platform to advocate for underrepresented voices, he couldn't ignore the weight of Evelyn Harper's struggle. After the event, Diesel sought her out. He spotted her standing near the entrance, dressed in her floral print dress and wide-brimmed hat, looking both elegant and slightly out of place among the sea of tailored suits and designer gowns. Approaching her cautiously, he extended his hand and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Vin Diesel," he said warmly. "I heard about your story, and I'd love to hear more." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, surprised to see such a famous face addressing her. For a moment she wondered if this was some kind of prank, but Diesel's sincerity quickly put her at ease. His eyes were kind, his demeanor humble, and his interest genuine. Over the next hour, they sat together in a quiet corner of the ballroom, sipping coffee as Evelyn recounted her journey. She told him about Isaiah Harper, her great-grandfather, and how he had risen from slavery to become a founding shareholder of the bank. She shared the ridicule she faced when she first made her claim, the skepticism of lawyers and historians, and the painstaking work she and Tanya had done to gather evidence. Diesel listened intently, nodding along as Evelyn spoke. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, visibly moved. "This is incredible," he said softly. "What you're doing, it's not just about reclaiming ownership. It's about rewriting history, giving voice to those who've been silenced for generations." He paused, then added, "I want to help." At first, Evelyn hesitated. She appreciated Diesel's offer, but she didn't want to burden anyone else with her fight. Besides, involving a celebrity could bring unwanted scrutiny. Sensing her reluctance, Diesel reassured her. "You don't have to do this alone," he said firmly. "Sometimes having someone on your side can make all the difference. Let me use my resources to amplify your voice." Over the following weeks, Diesel became deeply involved in Evelyn's quest for justice. Using his connections in Hollywood and beyond, he assembled a team of experts dedicated to uncovering the truth. Forensic accountants combed through decades-old financial records, searching for any trace of Isaiah Harper's original stake in the bank. Historians scoured archives, unearthing forgotten documents that shed light on the systemic racism embedded in corporate practices during Reconstruction and beyond. Private investigators tracked down descendants of other early shareholders, hoping to piece together a clearer picture of the bank's origins. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when Diesel enlisted the help of Dr. Marcus Hale, the historian Evelyn and Tanya had consulted earlier. Together, they discovered correspondence between Isaiah Harper and key figures in the banking industry. These letters revealed not only Isaiah's role in shaping the bank's policies, but also the deliberate efforts by later executives to erase minority contributions from official records. One particularly damning memo outlined a strategy to consolidate ownership by excluding descendants of early black investors during mergers and acquisitions. As the investigation progressed, Diesel ensured that Evelyn's story reached a global audience. He posted updates on social media, sharing snippets of the evidence they uncovered and urging his millions of followers to support the cause. Celebrities and activists joined the conversation, amplifying Evelyn's message. News outlets picked up the story, running features that highlighted the broader implications of her fight. Overnight, Evelyn Harper went from being dismissed as a delusional senior citizen to becoming a symbol of resilience and determination. But Diesel's involvement wasn't limited to raising awareness. He personally accompanied Evelyn to meetings with attorneys, historians, and financial analysts, ensuring she had the support she needed every step of the way. His presence commanded respect, opening doors that might otherwise have remained closed. Executives who initially scoffed at Evelyn's claims now found themselves facing a formidable opponent, a Hollywood icon determined to expose the truth. For Evelyn, having Diesel by her side was both empowering and humbling. She never imagined her quiet battle would attract such high-profile attention, but she couldn't deny the impact it was having. With each new discovery, she felt closer to vindicating her great-grandfather's legacy and proving to the world that her family's contributions mattered. Tanya, too, was grateful for Diesel's involvement. Watching her grandmother transform from a woman burdened by doubt to a confident leader inspired her more than ever. "Vin isn't just helping us win this fight," Tanya remarked one evening. "He's showing people what real allyship looks like. He's using his privilege to uplift others, and that's powerful." Despite the progress, challenges remained. Some critics accused Diesel of exploiting Evelyn's story for publicity, while others dismissed the entire effort as a publicity stunt. But neither Evelyn nor Diesel paid much attention to the naysayers. They knew the truth was on their side, and they were committed to seeing it through. One night, as they reviewed the latest findings, Diesel turned to Evelyn with a smile. "You know," he said, "this isn't just your victory anymore. It belongs to everyone who's ever been told their voice doesn't matter. You're paving the way for change, Evelyn, and I'm honored to stand beside you." Evelyn smiled back, her eyes shining with gratitude. For so long, she had carried the weight of her family's history alone. Now, with Diesel and countless others rallying behind her, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. No matter what happened, the truth would finally see the light of day. And when it did, the world would never forget the name Evelyn Harper, or the legacy of Isaiah Harper that she fought so hard to reclaim. The day of the confrontation arrived, and Evelyn Harper stood outside the towering marble building of First National Trust Bank, her heart steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Beside her was Vin Diesel, his presence commanding yet supportive. Together they entered the bank's headquarters, their footsteps echoing through the grand lobby. The air felt tense, charged with anticipation. This wasn't just another meeting. It was the culmination of months of research, investigation, and determination. Today, Evelyn would present irrefutable evidence to prove her claim, and nothing would stop her. They were ushered into a sleek boardroom on the top floor, where executives sat around a polished mahogany table. The atmosphere was formal, almost sterile, with suits and ties dominating the room. Evelyn noticed how some of the executives exchanged uneasy glances as she and Diesel took their seats. She could sense their discomfort, but she didn't let it distract her. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, laying out the truth in a way that no one could ignore. Vin Diesel began the presentation, his deep voice commanding attention. He introduced himself briefly before turning the floor over to Evelyn. "This is Mrs. Evelyn Harper," he said, gesturing toward her. "Her family has a story to tell, one that's been buried for far too long. And today, we're here to bring it to light." Evelyn nodded, her hands resting calmly on the table. She opened the folder she had brought with her, revealing a collection of documents, photographs, and letters. One by one, she presented them, explaining their significance with clarity and conviction. First, she showed the stock certificates bearing Isaiah Harper's name, faded but legible. These weren't just pieces of paper. They were proof of ownership, tangible evidence of her great-grandfather's investment in the bank. Next, she displayed correspondence between Isaiah and other founding shareholders. In one letter, Isaiah outlined his vision for the bank, emphasizing the importance of serving marginalized communities. Another document detailed his participation in shareholder meetings, where he advocated for policies that prioritized inclusivity and fairness. As Evelyn spoke, the room grew quieter. Executives leaned forward, studying the documents with growing unease. Then came the most damning revelation: internal memos from the early 20th century. Forensic accountants and historians had uncovered these records during their investigation, and they painted a chilling picture. The memos revealed deliberate efforts by bank executives to exclude descendants of minority shareholders during mergers and acquisitions. Terms like streamlining ownership and consolidating control masked what was essentially a campaign to erase black contributions from the bank's history. Evelyn placed these documents on the table, letting them speak for themselves. As the presentation continued, Evelyn shared personal stories passed down through generations. She spoke about Isaiah's struggles, how he worked tirelessly to build wealth despite facing discrimination at every turn. She described the sacrifices her family made to hold on to fragments of their legacy, even as systemic racism sought to strip them of everything they owned. Her words carried weight, each sentence dripping with emotion and resolve. By the time Evelyn finished speaking, the room was silent. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. The executives stared at the evidence laid out before them, unable to deny its authenticity. Finally, the CEO cleared his throat and addressed the group. "Mrs. Harper," he began, his voice tinged with disbelief, we had no idea. If what you're saying is true, and it certainly appears to be, then this institution owes your family an apology, a profound one." Evelyn met his gaze, her expression unwavering. "It's not just about apologies," she replied firmly. "My family built this bank alongside others. We contributed to its success, only to have our stake diluted and our contributions erased. That's not something you can simply say sorry for and move on. Justice demands accountability." Diesel stepped in at this point, reinforcing Evelyn's message. "What we're asking for isn't unreasonable," he said. "It's restitution for the harm done to the Harper family and countless others who've faced similar injustices. This isn't just about money. It's about recognizing the value of black contributions to this country's economic foundation. You have an opportunity here to do the right thing, to lead by example." The executives exchanged nervous glances, clearly grappling with the implications of what they had just learned. Some scribbled notes furiously, while others whispered among themselves. After several minutes of deliberation, the CEO spoke again. "We'll need time to review everything thoroughly," he admitted. "But I assure you, Mrs. Harper, we will address this matter seriously. Your family deserves answers, and so does the public." Though the meeting ended without immediate resolution, Evelyn left the boardroom feeling a sense of vindication. For years she had been laughed at, dismissed, and ignored. But now the people in power couldn't look away. They had seen the proof, heard her story, and recognized the gravity of the situation. The tide was finally turning. Outside the building, reporters gathered, eager for updates. Diesel fielded questions on Evelyn's behalf, ensuring her message reached a wide audience. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter," he told the crowd. "A chapter where truth prevails and justice is served. Mrs. Harper's fight isn't just hers. It belongs to everyone who's ever been denied their rightful place in history." As Evelyn stood beside him, cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward, she felt a wave of pride wash over her. She thought of Isaiah Harper, her great-grandfather, who had dared to dream of equality and opportunity in a world determined to hold him back. She thought of her grandmother, who had instilled in her the importance of preserving their family's legacy, and she thought of Tanya, whose unwavering support had kept her going when the road seemed impossible. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn allowed herself to feel hope, not just for herself, but for future generations. The evidence was undeniable, the truth undeniable. What remained was the reckoning, and Evelyn Harper was ready to face it head-on.